Sunday soul. In Columbia, Sunday soul. Sunday soul. In Columbia, Sunday soul.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with none other than Dr. Johnnie Cordero, who is the South Carolina Democratic Party Black Caucus founder. Thanks so much for coming on with us today, Dr. Cordero. We are so impressed by your body of work and the litany of accomplishments that you have done in this party. And you have worked so tirelessly through the years to be an advocate for the people. And I just want to say how much we really appreciate you. And you've been a great mentor for me. I appreciate being able to call and get really solid information from you. We need our elders to get more involved. So thanks for coming on Table Talk today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for having me. And just, one good looks deserves another, as we used to say. But I'm also proud of, and I'm old enough to be able to say I'm proud of your accomplishments. And I'm proud of what you've been doing in the community, and that you've been bringing light and life to issues that have been long time festering, but just needed someone to take a look at them and look at them critically. And you've done that. And we appreciate you for that. And we're proud of you for that.
Wow. Thank you so very much. Before we kind of get into things, because tonight's conversation is something else. There's a lot of stuff that's going on.
We're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, we might get in trouble a little bit, but isn't that what we're known for? Yeah. So, but anyway, but tell us a little bit, because you do have a podcast. You've got some other things going on. Kind of tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you personally.
I don't know where to start, and I don't want to take up too much time on me personally, but I can tell you the quick points. One, I do have a podcast. It's called the Cordero Report. I intended to start it out doing it regularly, weekly, but I found out it's more important to speak or to have the podcast issues when they're issues that should be addressed. So I didn't go on a regular basis, but that's up and together. I'm also the founder, president, and CEO of the South Carolina Community Black Caucus. And the Community Black Caucus is a 501c4 nonprofit, nonpartisan corporation. And what we try to do with that is we're trying to teach people how politics truly operates, and to get our people to recognize how important it is for us to join together, because we are a significant portion, we're the majority of the electorate in Democratic electorate in South Carolina, so that we should get more.
Mm-hmm.
We should, most people don't recognize that democracy really means majority rules.
Right.
That's what democracy means. So we're 66.7, some pay size, 70% of that population. And yet we don't exercise the power. And people tell me don't use the word control. Mm-hmm. But come on, that's what it boils down to. And we should. And I think part of the reason for that, my grandmother used to say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice,
shame on me.
And so I have to be as strident about our unwillingness to get involved in order to make things happen. But I think that's as a result of so many years of our recognizing that the party did not work in our true interest. And people just eventually get tired. But true. I want everyone to understand that Black folk in South Carolina are as educated, as intelligent, and as politically savvy as anybody else. But that what we have done, to our disadvantage, I believe, but what we have done, but speaking pragmatically, or looking at it pragmatically, what we have done is we've said, that's it. I'm tired. I'm tired of messing with these people. I'm tired of wasting my time. They ain't going to change. Well,
kind of giving up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true. Mm-hmm. They're not going to change. We have to change them.
And speaking of that, those of us who were tracking the midterms very closely, because, we had a lot of high hopes. We knew how contentious some of these districts were. We lost, some people say we were just lambasted, good old ass kicking in the South Carolina House, which rendered a supermajority for Republicans in the South Carolina House. But in the state of South Carolina during the midterm or general election, it was 50.86% of the vote. There were 1.7 million ballots cast. out of 46 counties reporting out of a possible 3.379 million registered voters. But still, this was a highly contentious race that ended up with the Democratic Party coming up super short. What do you think some of the shortfalls were in the party that rendered such a disappointing result in this general election?
The short answer is messaging. That's their big problem. And because this has been happening for so long, remember, the turnout this time, or the results of this midterm election, is nothing new. Mm-hmm. This has been going on for 2 decades. Mm-hmm. So they can't back and say we don't recognize that there's a problem. There is a problem. And the problem is the Democratic Party has just decided, let me back up and put it this way. Here's their strategy. Their strategy is to ensure that they knock on doors, mm-hmm. okay, that they do rallies, other events, okay. And the reason for that is they work on numbers. Mm-hmm. And why the numbers are important is because then with the numbers, they go back to the donors and say, this is what we did. We knocked on 10,000 doors, and the money starts to flow in.
So this is really about money.
Absolutely. Raising money to lose.
Raising money to lose. That's a very interesting analogy.
Because there is money in losing.
There's money in losing.
Of course.
I was really taken back by Mia McLeod's most recent statement. Mm-hmm. At first, I was pretty critical of Mia McLeod, considering the amount of support that some of us threw behind her campaign. And I've been hearing from, constituents all across the state of South Carolina, and many were just super proud of her as a Black woman running for governor. And she seemed like she had such a strong campaign, right? She had such good messaging, and I do believe that she's for the people. But the way that after she made the announcement that she was leaving the party, the response that some members of the House ended up giving about their disappointment in her leaving the party had many of us on the wrong side. But once we actually took a look at her very graceful bow out, and we understood from the perspective, for those of you that don't know and have not actually looked at the statement that Mia McLeod gave, it was one that was just truly genuine.
Of course it was.
To understand that she felt, and one of her statements was, I think, as a Black woman, she felt like she was not supported.
She wasn't.
And she felt like the party did not back her people first campaign.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that she is, and first of all, one of the things, and not I'm not being corrective, but I like to refer to her as Senator McLeod, because she is a senator.
Senator McLeod, yes.
Let's give her her props.
Senator McLeod,
okay.
You're absolutely right.
And there's no way to do this without being honest about it. The fact of the matter is that the party made its choice, and its choice was Golden Boy Cunningham. Mm-hmm. And everybody else be damned. That's what it was about. And the bottom line is they had no reason to believe that boy was going to win, other than he was a white boy. Mm-hmm. And excuse me for saying that. And I tell people this all the time, and I usually start off all the speeches I give by saying this. There's only one race, and that's the human race.
Yeah.
Okay. But that being said, just remember
this is South Carolina.
This is South Carolina.
And we got to keep it all the way 100.
100.
All
Absolutely.
the way 100.
And so that's what they did. And now if you want to support, intelligence says, in this particular instance, intelligence said, it is time for Black women to step up and to be supported, because they're not only the backbone of the Democratic Party nationwide, as well as in South Carolina, but also because there are so many qualified Black women. Okay. Biden puts a Black woman on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Black women.
Vice President.
The Vice President.
Over HUD.
Black women put in functionally put Biden in office, because Biden, it was South Carolina that did it for
was
years.
South
And
Carolina.
the voters in South Carolina, the black voters in South Carolina are predominantly females.
They reinvigorated that presidential race.
Absolutely.
And-
He was a lost cause.
Yeah, we
until
thought
that.
it was done.
He was
We thought it was done.
He was dead in the water.
We thought there was no way
Mhm.
that, you know, they were calling young voters. You know,
Mhm.
I'm kind of calling myself young
I
here.
got you. Younger than me. Younger than me.
We're
You're still
saying,
young.
you know, Father Time's never going to win, right?
Mhm.
And then we see Majority Whip Congressman Clyburn step up and rally those women. And you're right, black women are the backbone of this party. And to hear in Senator McLeod's statement, and I read, quote, by not engaging, she's talking about the South Carolina Democratic Party, okay? Because that's what we're here talking about. Where are the Dems? Where are the Dems? By not engaging, enlightening, or expanding the electorate and refusing to publicize the June primary, McLeod alleged. As a result, and this is reading from the state, as a result, the party lost a handful of black House legislators, many of whom were women, black women. State Representatives Kimberly Johnson, Chardell Murray, Ann Parks, and Crystal Matthews. Now, we won't get into Crystal Matthews in this conversation, but all of those women lost their seats in the House. What is the point of contention in the party when it comes to really getting behind the black voters, seeing as how the most recent information that we got from the party, you know, is that black voters matter. Black voters are the backbone of our party. Why is it so difficult for the party to get behind its biggest base?
You got two issues here. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because you're putting your finger right on what the issue is. Here's what the issue is, in my humble view. The issue is very simply this. You, and I'm telling you in case you don't know,
Okay.
you have a better chance of controlling a black male than a black female. That's the problem. Okay. So what we do is that, I remember Shirley Chisholm was I'm from New York. I know you know that. I'm from New York originally. And I lived in Shirley Chisholm's congressional district.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as Shirley Chisholm said, as Congresswoman, late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm said, she was unbought and unbossed.
Right.
Okay. So here you have women who you could support, and it would be perfectly right for you to support, given the time, given the circumstances, perfectly right to support. But if you want someone who you can control, black women ain't it.
Yeah, you just ain't gonna control a sister.
Black women ain't it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I believe that, I know that anytime you have someone, and this has happened within the party itself, without telling tales out of school, I can tell you this. There was a person who was in the running for an office in South Carolina Democratic Party, and that person was the most qualified. Okay, didn't get the position because, and I quote without quoting who said this, and I have a reason for doing that, said that this person was far and away the choice for this position.
Okay.
Until the interview. And in the interview, this person, the candidate, did not answer the questions properly, and the person who this person would be working for, they said they couldn't count on him to follow the program.
Okay. So this is about programming.
Yeah.
If you don't fit in South Carolina politics, I think that's one of the things that makes me so frustrated. And one of the things that I was able to understand the most at its most deepest meaning was when Senator McLeod said, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing year after year, election after election, and expecting a different result, then the South Carolina Democratic Party is the poster child for what a losing strategy on repeat looks like. Now, what's interesting to me is this was the first year that I was actively engaging in precinct work.
Mhm.
My personal experience in trying to navigate through just a thick layer of, I don't even really know what to call it. My goal was to reach out to the voters. My goal was to engage the community, just as you know me to do.
Mhm.
And I found such difficulty in trying to provide the type of feedback that would help us create better messaging for us to be able to reach a broader Black voting base. And it was rejected. What is the refusal to change? Is it racism? Is it capitalism? Or is it just pure ignorance?
Benjamin Disraeli said, I'm paraphrasing now, but
Mhm.
said that race, race is and always will be the uh, the most important factor in everything,
Mhm.
and that I believe is true. So
We're
I,
so obsessed with race in this country.
we can concede that part of it, I think,
Okay.
and move on from that. So it's more than race. Race. If you don't like me because of the color of my skin, care.
Right.
Okay. If you don't want to invite me to your home, I don't care.
Right.
If you want to keep me out of the public library, then I care.
I got a problem.
Now I got a
Yeah.
problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is that racism is the underlying factor,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it's unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really talking about, and this is what we have to start doing, we have to start calling it as to what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What it is white supremacy.
Mm.
That's the bottom line. I can even be more specific. It's white male supremacy from day one.
From day one.
Okay. And what that means is that we, because we're white, we, because we're males, we have to control all of the engines of government, of commerce, of economics, and of politics. And now, once the slaves were freed, and once the 15th Amendment was passed, and we had the vote, then what we had to control, and this has been the singular governing strategy since, and that is to stop us from utilizing the vote.
The vote.
That's what this is all about.
And many of us don't yet, after all of this time, we still, as a people, do not yet know what that means. And, this is one of the reasons why, I made sure to work with the Pro Truth Coalition and testify, before the Education Subcommittee, because I understood that the way the history is being taught, as it's always been taught to children, is where it begins. It's the brooding and shaping, citizens' understanding of the past really is about power. I really like that former City of Columbia Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine, made it very clear that this party, needs more diversity in its party leadership. Who's in control of the South Carolina Democratic Party? Who is the South Carolina Democratic Party?
You ask good questions. Who is control of the party? As an official party organization, it is basically no matter what anybody says, is the chair. Is the chair and the executive director.
Okay.
Actually do it. There's a committee, there are an executive committee and all of that, and they write rules and all of that. But in the end, it's the chair and
the chair and the executive committee.
Supposedly it's actually the chair and the executive director.
Okay.
Basically, everybody else is, they vote on stuff.
They vote on stuff,
but they don't run things.
Okay.
And one thing that's important is to be able to keep everything close to your vest. Okay. So
including
that
your purse.
knows what you're doing. Oh, especially the purse.
Especially the purse.
Especially the purse, because this is all about money.
It's all about money.
That's right. And that's also here's think about it this way. You've got a corporation. You manufacture a product. And year after year, your product does not sell. It's still sitting on the shelves from year to year, and you still getting a fat check.
Why change? It's working.
It's working. You know. Now, here's something that other people have mentioned, and that is, I think it's, I can't prove it, but I think it's significant, and I think it's something that we should consider. When I was years ago, when we had the Berlin Wall was still up, and there was a Cold War going on, I always thought to myself, they're talking about who's the most powerful and who's going to control the world, in effect. But in the end, there's still white folks running.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's white Americans or white Russians, it's still white folk controlling everything. So bring that down on a local level, okay? You've got the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what difference does it make who wins in the end if they're all going to do the same thing?
Now that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting analogy because Janice from Sumter, South Carolina says, "Do you believe that the current South Carolina Democratic Party is, in her words, not mine, is it a sleeper cell for the Republican Party? Is the South Carolina Democratic Party an operative for the Republican Party truly?"
Wise woman. Wise woman. I think it's certainly something to consider,
Mm-hmm.
and I would certainly not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I can tell you this: it doesn't make any difference whether that's true or not. If we're two separate groups and we're working for the same goals, even though we both don't admit we're working for the same goals, if we're working for the same goals, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
They're
It's a win-win for the other side just based on one particular set of parameters, which is white supremacy.
bottom line.
Okay. Because their world doesn't change very much.
And let me define white supremacy.
Okay.
White supremacy is an ideology.
Mm-hmm.
It is political, cultural, economic, and religious.
Mm-hmm.
The intention of it is to ensure now and in perpetuity that white folks, particularly white men, are control of everything that means anything.
All interest,
And
all controlling interest.
And that is not only in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
but globally.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been the case from day one.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people this all the time that the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Most people know about what that was. They catch you anywhere and they say you're a slave if you're black. You know, you're going somewhere. You're going somewhere, right? And they're gonna hold on to you till that. But anyway, so you have the Fugitive Slave Act, but the first Fugitive Slave Act was not 1850.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know this. The first Fugitive Slave Act was in 1793,
Mm-hmm.
and it was signed by none other than George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say from day one, I mean from day one. Okay, and it continues this way.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in law school, someone asked a question of the press, and I have to give it because he's gone now, but I want to give him his props. His name was Joel Crayer, and feisty old man, taught me a lot. White man, by the way. The question was asked, is there corruption in the law? And he said, I'll not forget, he smoked cigars. You could smoke in school at that time. He said, corruption? Why, it's statutory. And that's what it is. So remember now, you've got these people who are making the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as my grandmother used to say, let me make the rules,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll win the game every time.
Every time.
And every time there's a rule made, they make a loophole in the law so that they can get out of it if necessary. So my point is this. What we don't understand is that, yeah, you're right that it looks as though your vote is unimportant, okay, because it's going to be taken for granted, and you're likely right. But if you want to make the change, you've got to get in and control it, and you control it by, why do you think it was that they kept in segregation after slavery and segregation? Why did they keep us out of everything?
Mm-hmm.
Look at history now. Everything that we were kept out of, when we finally got in, what do? We excelled.
Mm-hmm.
In every single thing, every sport, finance, everything, we excel.
Right.
So my point is this. We don't lack the intelligence, obviously. They ain't a damn thing inferior about us, okay? And we can do it with the best of them. But the game is confusion and obfuscation.
And confusion is illusion.
That's right. And by the way, the word war actually means confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're doing, this confusion. And the confusion does not operate necessarily from intelligence. The confusion is the fact that I don't think I can win. I think I'm wasting my time.
Mm-hmm.
That's confusion, because you can win, but you got to be in it to win it.
And I like that, because as I was, this whole situation at the Colony Apartments is, I think, a very good example of a lot of, it's the fruit of the gerrymandering process. And I have said to many people who have reached out to us, and those of you that haven't seen it, I urge you to go watch the Colony Special Report. It'll be below in this link. Many people have come to me and said, I just don't understand. What is it that I've done to deserve this? I don't know what to do. And that level of helplessness drives anger. It drives the hopelessness that drives people to addiction, to violence. And one of the ways that I have been able, I think, to be impactful in leadership and dealing with such a trying time is to help people understand the process. A good example of that is actually the SC state housing. They didn't actually have a campaign that was designed to garner greater public exposure for their January the 18th meeting, which is just in 4 days. Now, housing, we understand, in the Black community is at an all-time high. It's a crisis. There is a lack of subsidized housing, and a large majority of the subsidized housing that's in the city of Columbia, what's happened to it? It's been demolished.
And even affordable housing.
Even affordable housing.
Yeah.
And that word has been bastardized so much.
Of course.
But understanding that the system is not broken. The system is working as it was designed.
So true.
But helping people understand that system and helping people to understand who the players are has empowered a new generation of thinkers around me. And they've said, I did not know that existed. I took a poll of 120 people around the county through Meta. And it was so interesting, the results of that. It was just 4 questions. And one of them was, do you know who represents you at the state, city, and the county level? 78% did not know. Did not know. Even the seasoned advocates and activists that were out helping did not know who their state senator was, who their House representative was, what county council district they lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell people all the time, yes, it's wonderful to go out and be able to feed people and make sure that people are warm and safe. But we've also got to make sure that we're doing our part to ensure that people understand these processes. How do you think the party, tell me, when did you found the Black Caucus inside of the SCDP?
Good question. 2017?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 2017.
How much has the party changed since then?
The only change I'm going to stop hanging out with you. You asked too many good questions. The party has changed functionally by getting rid of the Black Caucus. That's how the party has changed. Other than that, there's been no change.
Okay.
So
you, by getting rid of the Black Caucus, now Brandon Upson is currently the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party's Black Caucus. Do you feel that the caucus has been vacated since you left, even though there is currently another chair in place?
I founded the Black Caucus for a specific purpose and mission. And that was to ensure that the issues of importance to African Americans in South Carolina were placed front and center.
I'm sure you got quite a lashing for that.
Not on the Blackbird, of course. In fact, it was I was also the chair of the Affirmative Action Committee for the 2020 delegate selection for the 2020 election. Part of my job was to, one, sign off on the South Carolina Democratic Party's proposal for how to reach Black folks or to apply affirmative action policies in South Carolina for the selection of delegates. And you know, delegates are the ones who vote. Okay. So that was my job. That was part one. Part two of my job was to sign off on, to stay or approve of their actual handling of the proposed plan. They did absolutely nothing. Nothing of that plan. And when I refused, that's when the trouble started. I refused to sign off on it. So
now let's talk about that trouble, because rumor has it that you have actually sued the party.
Yeah, there's an ongoing lawsuit.
It is an ongoing lawsuit.
That's great.
What was the point of suing when you already had so much intel about many of the issues that existed as it related to, you know, things that were important to the Black community? You already knew that they weren't doing these things, right?
That's correct.
So what was the point of the lawsuit?
The point of the lawsuit was to force them to, okay, back up. The affirmative action plan of the South Carolina Democratic Party came as a result of, oh, guess what? A Black woman, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Florence.
In the Mississippi Democratic Party.
Okay.
In 1968, if you don't know the story, and if your viewers don't know the story, Fannie Lou Hamer started her and others started the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. On the 1968 election, they went to the convention and they challenged the Mississippi Democratic Party. They wanted to unseat the Mississippi Democratic Party and seat the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, led by Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. Okay, she didn't win. Okay, but as a result, in 1972, they changed the rules, and that's the rules that we're governed under now. And the Affirmative Action Committee plan was as a result of this Black woman standing up and fighting.
To ensure that members of the Democratic Party were not disenfranchised.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
So it makes sense, if you want to keep people disenfranchised, not to fund the affirmative.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So here's the three levels. Here's how it works. First was slavery, getting out of slavery. After we got out of slavery, it was the 13th Amendment. After we got out of slavery, okay,
Reconstruction.
15th Amendment got us the right to vote. Okay. Now, there was a case, what's his name? George Gilmore versus the South Carolina Democratic Party and the Richland County Democratic Party decided in 1947, because he sued because the party would not let Black people vote in the primaries. So that's how we got the vote in the primary. Okay. In that case, the court held that its finding that this was illegal was the order that it issued was for the current defendants and for their signs and those who came after them. Okay. So what happened was, and I'm trying to make this as brief as I can, what happened was when we asked for a budget, said, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's the plan. I'm with it. Here's the budget. I need the budget in order to make it happen. Carol Fowler, who now they've named the center, the headquarters. Did you know this headquarters say Don and Carol Fowler? Carol Fowler told me that, she said, oh, forget that. She said, we don't fund that. And I said, what do you mean we don't fund it? She said, no, we don't fund it. She told me to go ring doorbells or something. But anyway, that may not be her ways. But in any event, we don't fund it.
So you were brushed off.
And they didn't fund it.
Okay.
Okay. So how are you going to implement these proposals without funding? We asked for $94,000. Okay. That was the offering proposal. They could have came back and said, no, well, we can't afford $94,000, but we can afford $50,000, $30,000, whatever. That's it. You're not getting it. There's no money. Now, after that, what they just basically did was roughed off the next part of the election. Richland County, okay, sent out with over 115,000 registered Democrats in Richland County. They sent out a ballot of 486 people.
A slate ballot?
A slate ballot.
And what was the election for the slate ballot? Was this for the chair position?
That was for all positions, all elected positions in the party. And they came out with a slate. Now, meanwhile, they never notified me. And although I was on the executive committee, they never notified me of the election because they knew I was going to run, or they thought I was going to run. Whether I would or not is something else again. And so when they did the slate and brought the slate out, I went to people in the party and I told them, I said, listen, you can't do that. I said, because you're disenfranchising all the other Democrats. All of them have a right to vote.
Tens of thousands of people
have a right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I brought I did my due diligence. I went to Jamie Harrison. I went to Trav Robertson. I went to those people, and everybody just, the heck with it. We're not going to do anything. So I sued. Okay. Wow. And that's what the lawsuit.
So do you feel like, okay, this is a lot to take in. I know you guys are out there like, because I'm blown, right? Mm-hmm. And I absolutely know who Fannie Lou Hamer is. But I actually had her confused with the whole debacle with the Florence.
Oh, that's something else. Dan, you're talking about Maddie Thomas.
About Maddie Thomas.
Another black woman
who was disenfranchised.
That's right.
That stood out in my mind because I definitely want to hear about that as well. Mm-hmm. But from what I hear you say is that instead of the South Carolina Democratic Party funding the Affirmative Action Committee, which is designed to ensure that African American people of color mm-hmm. are not disenfranchised
specifically from delegate positions, because
leadership.
It's the delegates who get to go to the convention,
right,
and vote,
and
that's how you become, either
it's the electorate,
a candidate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, it's them to do that. So this was to ensure, because that's what Fannie Lou Hamer was doing.
Right.
Our people couldn't come to the convention because they wouldn't allow them to become delegates.
Right.
And that's where that came from. Maddie Thomas is something else. She's a dear friend of mine, a trailblazer, mm-hmm. a pioneer. She's in her 70s. I know Maddie, I know you won't help me for saying that. She's in her 70s.
Yeah.
And she was elected chair of the Florence County Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And they had her rerun. I think she ran 3 times for that one position.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept going at her until they beat her. And I did a piece called The Political Lynching of Maddie Thomas. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about it, she's an outspoken, beloved black woman, an elder statesman, and they did what they did to all of them.
There is something about having a voice. And I think that's why so many of us who want to see, the word that I'm using this year is not change, because I know so many of us fear change, but it is my desire that we would create amongst ourselves the type of development that allows us to see fruit. But it appears that it is very difficult in this party. And I would say the Richland County Democratic Party too, which is a service party, an agent for the South Carolina Democratic Party. I would say that it's very difficult to have a voice, especially if you are a strong black man. Why do you, and I know we see that there are a number of strong black women, and I love that. For those of you that haven't read the 1619 Project, I urge all black women to read pages 45 to 61, because truly those pages are about you, okay? And you'll understand so much about America and black women in America if you read those pages. But many black women expect for there to be solid male leadership. Even strong black women who are in very powerful positions have said, we need more strong black men. But when speaking with black men, some of which who are,
very strong leaders in their communities all across the state feel like there just isn't any room for us at the table. What's been your experience as caucus chair, as affirmative action chair, really doing that work? When you're hearing from Black men, what has that experience been like for them?
I think the issue is really the same, and I agree with you. We have many strong Black men who are fighting. But this is my personal observation. The difficulty I've had is that people who come to me and say, "Yeah, bro, Johnny, I'm with you, man. I think you're right, man. Speak out." But that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what it is. I don't know what drives it. I think it might be political ambition. And a lot of us seem, okay, let me use an analogy, and this is going to really upset everybody, but here's the analogy. As Malcolm well said, there were field you know who and house you know who.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And using that as the starting point. Those people who worked in the field, there were two further sets of people within that community, so to speak. There were those who wanted to escape the plantation altogether, and there were those whose aspiration it was to get out the fields and to become a servant.
To get out the hot field
in the house
and out the hot labor.
That's right.
So the only way for you to do that, other than escaping, was for you to work your way up through the ranks. Yeah.
And that's the analogy.
And I like that you said that, because in my opinion, based on, even just reading, that the goal has always been to disenfranchise the Black family through means of making sure that Black men and women were disjointed.
Well, and you put your finger on another important issue, and that is the family is the foundation of all civilization.
Yeah.
Families. Okay. Disrupt the family, and you disrupt their civilization. And that's what that's what this, from slavery time, that's always what this has been. So back to that analogy, the people who want to get into the White House, into the big house, don't understand or don't care that you're still
on the plantation. It doesn't.
There are people who feel the same way that we do, certainly the way I do, and I believe the way that you do. And they are within the Democratic Party. I can't tell you how many people have called me, texted me, and said, "Well, you've been right. We've been fighting for 5 years. I know you must be happy." I'm not happy. I'm pleased that people are now speaking up, but they're not speaking up in numbers. So what we have to do is we have to find a way. We have to do two things. One, we have to find a way to have the people who are already in the party, who are now sort of coming forward, okay? We have to get them, make it worth their while to speak out publicly. Dr. King and Malcolm had not diametrical philosophies, but one was nonviolence and the other was self-defense. They both died with bullets in their head. So what was the thing that was the same about them? Not their philosophy, certainly. What it was that they had people listening to them. And that's why it's significant that people need to speak up. I haven't had anyone to say anything about this lawsuit, okay? I've been fighting this for 2.5 years.
By the way, they told me not to touch that, but I touched it.
And it's, I mean, remember this, for those who feel that way, lawsuit is a matter of public record. You can go and pull a lawsuit and see it for yourself. So just so they know that. But we have to get those to speak out. Okay, what is your problem? What are you afraid of? I know what you're afraid of. You're afraid that your political career might be political suicide. And I understand that, but is that why we're here as Black people? Are we here for our ambition? Are we here to serve our people?
Right. And I think that's where we've crossed the line.
That's right.
Yeah. And again, you in the house.
And the second thing is,
We don't want to give up our comfortability.
that's right.
Yeah.
Here's the second thing. Our young people have to take the reins. They have to take the reins. And they're not going to take the reins because not because they haven't been taught, but because they have in fact studied and seen the tricks. Nation of Islam referred to as tricknology.
Yeah.
And they've seen the tricknology. Okay. And they're saying, I don't want no parts of this.
Yeah.
But what we have to do is we have to message them in a way that they understand the importance of this. And more importantly, or as importantly, that they understand that the battle can be won, but we need people
Work
to
out
win
in
it.
our favor.
And that's so interesting.
How do we then, what kind of messaging do we need from elders to open up a pathway for younger people to step into leadership? Is there an avenue?
I think the foundation of that approach, and it can work, is one analogy again. Relay races. Okay. If you know anything about relay races, they train you to basically when the gun goes off, you haul ass,
Mm-hmm.
and
With
all
your
you're
baton.
doing is running with your baton to get it to the next person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The person who you're going to pass the baton to, again, they are in the ready, their hand extended behind them. They don't look behind them to see when you're catching up. They're focused ahead. And all they know is when they feel that baton hit their hand, they grasp it and run like hell.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. We're the first generation of runners.
Mm-hmm.
We passed the baton, but our problem, and I'm talking about my generation, is we want to tell the next runner how to run.
Yeah.
My job is to get the baton to you and for you to run it the best way you can. There was a story about this kid from Africa who was they went over, saw him running in Africa, and they timed him, and he was, breaking all world records and everything. So they brought him to America. Okay. And they got him on the field, and the first time he tried out, he was miserable.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't figure out why he could run so in Africa and couldn't run here. The reason was, in Africa, he ran barefooted. But that was his way to run.
Right.
But they couldn't take the shoes off him here because the law said you had to wear the shoes. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do. That's one. That's what older folks have to do. The other thing is, as a people, we have to understand that at my age, all I have is experience and knowledge. I'm not going to say I have wisdom, and I'm not going to say generally that older folks have wisdom, because I know a whole lot of old fools. Exactly. But young people, they have the energy.
Mm-hmm.
They have the stamina to run the race when I can no longer do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they drive a wedge between us. We have to start intergenerational meetings. Okay. The other thing that older folks have to understand is we told them kids, get an education, get an education, get an education, not realizing that when they got an education, what the education was going to teach them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about the indoctrination now,
Mm-hmm.
what the education was going to teach them ultimately was critical thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started using critical thinking skills, guess what? They were looking at what we were doing, and they're saying, you went for that shit?
Yeah. Like, are you serious?
You
And
for
now
real?
you want me?
And that ain't happening.
No.
So that drives a further wedge between us.
Yeah.
There's an old African proverb, not proverb, old action maxim that said every child's best friend must be an elder.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you love Dr. John Heinrich Clark.
That's right.
And I love his analogy about the elders and how the elders will always be provided for so long as the elder provides solid advice to young people.
But why were the elders revered? They were revered simply by the fact that they made it to this age.
Right.
Okay. We respected them because of that.
Right.
And we respected them because they were in and part of our lives
Yeah.
all the way through.
All the way through. But he said when the elder is corruptible,
Bingo.
when the elder is corruptible,
Mhm.
then the whole village is corrupted, because you needed an elder to get married. And then when you needed the elder's blessing, what'd you bring him? Shoes. When you needed his blessing, you brought him a goat. So the elder was always provided for because you needed the elder's blessing. But when the elder is corruptible, then so is the whole village. And I think we've gotten to a place where we have a lot of people that are dressed up as elders, sitting in high places. And we don't even want to get me started on the miseducation of the Negro, because I know you know Carter G. Woodson. And how he talks about the antiquated European educated system, but he speaks even worse about church and the places in church that have us fooled. But I think we have a lot of elders that have come to
Someone
that
asked
place.
me, we were at a convention, I'm trying to think of where it was, not important, USC, I think. Anyway, somebody asked me, what do you think is the number one, because I was saying there was a series of problems that we had to address. So what do you think the number one problem is that needs to be addressed, or number one belief that Black folks have that need to be addressed? And I thought for a minute, it didn't take me that long though. And I said, our big problem is that we believe that the ones who enslave us,
The Black woman.
will
And so
save us.
to read the comments by Senator McLeod, I thought about that, and it made me very emotional, and it made me a bit angry, because how could we, as a South Carolina Democratic Party, not throw support behind our strongest candidates because they were Black women?
Because you didn't want to win in the first place.
You didn't want to win in the first place, because there is more money in losing. Man, listen, I'm so glad that you stopped by here.
Thank you.
The way that you have put so much of this in perspective, and y'all, I'm sorry when we get off track, because we do that. we do that all the time. You know, we get into those types of conversations. But I would urge you all to get with your elders. Get with your elders.
Please.
Yeah, get with your elders. Why go through that much heartache when you don't have to? Or at least you can soften the blow, make the path a little bit more neat when you've got an elder that's already been there with each other. I urge you all, if you are registered to vote, vote. You got a presidential campaign. The information from the South Carolina Democratic Party will be available for you in these links. If you've got questions for Dr. Cordero, email us at Columbia Urban Broadcast Network @gmail.com, and we'll make sure that he gets them. Right on.
Thank you, my brother.
Right on, y'all. Tune in. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe this content. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.